Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co.
I'm Devin.
I'm Meg.
And this is a review of tiny turbo cars. I want to say tiny epic turbo cars, but it's not. It's just the tiny instinctively.
gets you.
It's like tiny epic turbo. No,
The box is too big.
Honestly, that should be the next game. That should be the next game. Tiny epic
collaboration between Horrible Guild and Gamelin Games.
Why have they not had a tiny epic racing game?
Interesting.
I don't know.
Tiny epic Rallyman.
That's what we're talking about. Either way, we're not talking about Tiny Epic today. We're talking about Tiny Turbo Cars from Horrible Guild. Tiny Turbo Cars is a racing game with a degree of action programming, which you're going to have on these little controllers over here. The general idea of the game is you're going to be trying to race. We have set up over here a 3-race track. In general, you'd have 5. You can obviously modulate or adjust it how you want, but you'd have 5 tracks over here, just like having on camera. You're going to start over here, and then you're trying to get to the end zone as you go. To that end, the players are going to be rapidly programming their controllers in order to decide exactly how things are moving around the board, and then eventually, as they're all done over there, as that's all done, they're going to grab one of these tokens, boom, that player's going first, then grab second and third, and they'll damage accordingly from these tokens.
We're going off our playthrough. I
the last person's going to have that little lose a damage over there. This is not really a timer per se, but your timer is the other players are racing to get there first. Because when you're done with that, you're going to start resolving your controllers. This is where I'll just go ahead and resolve this controller to give you an idea of how it plays. You're going to resolve the 2 middle rows always, nothing else. And so to that end, this person, let's pretend that's me over here. I'm currently pink over here. We're going to move forward 1, 2. Then I'm going to get a plus movement to my next movement, which is going to move forward 2. I'm going to pass through water, which means I'm going to take the slippery sign, which will affect me for the rest of this this particular turn. And my next movement is going to be a negative to whatever it is. That's going to be a turbo-powered battery movement, which means you look at your batteries, which are your health, and you move that many spaces forward. Meaning if you're taking damage, you'd move fewer spaces forward. Right now I'm at full health, so I'm going to go 1, 2, and I'm only going to move 2 though because previously I had a -1 modifier there. Then we move 2 to the red over here. We're going to have the blue side and the red side, so they are both directional, but also the board helps you visualize it. So I'm moving 2 to the red, towards the red, but because I'm slippery, all my diagonal movements are reversed for the rest of the round, which means I'm now moving 2 towards the blue, 1, 2. Then I'm going to get a battery back if I had lost anything, which I have not. And finally, I'll go ahead and move 1 towards the blue, but again, because I'm slippery, I'll move 1 towards the red, and that would be the resolution of a turn. That is how you play Tiny Turbo Cars. You're going to go ahead, and it's not bad, right?
That was not bad.
Yeah.
For an example turn, you did pretty good.
Yeah. That's as good as it's going to get. Past that, other players are going to mess with you by, being in your way, and you'll hit them, and your entire turn structure is moved off. You're also going to be desperately trying to get first because you don't want to be, ruined by the other players, which means there's a degree of chaos as you incorrectly plan where you're going to go, or you forget to take into account that now you're slippery, or you miss the fact that there's an obstacle on the board because there's a bunch of terrain elements we haven't heavily gotten into, from little power bars that are going to make you move further, to obstacles that will deal damage and slow down your movement, towards carpet that will limit how fast you can move if you start your movement on that turn. That's going to be a whole bunch of different terrain elements that modify and adjust how you're moving. But that's the core premise. Rapidly program your controller, try to get as far as possible, rinse and repeat the rounds, everyone going ahead taking the turns turn by turn, until eventually someone makes their way into the end zone over here, where the player who makes their way furthest into the end zone when the game end is triggered is going to be the winner of Tiny Turbo Cars.
Nice.
Anything else I missed?
I think you missed most of it, but I thought it was a very
I'm not
good...
sure if you said how you swapped these.
I did not.
Because it would be very advantageous if you just kept using the same controller.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At the end of your turn, you're going to go ahead and rapidly just turn this over and then riffle up the different things as much as possible, and then pass to the next player so they're not walking into it with a fresh, obviously ready-to-go controller. One other thing I did miss is the fact that you're going to have these little roll cards. You're going to have different roll cards that give you the specific cars you're playing as. They're going to have specific abilities and their own little shape, which gives you a little adjustment to, things you can do, extra diagonal movement, extra turbo movement, being a little more resistant to damage in different ways. You're going to have small adjustments to your specific character based on the way they play the game, and that is the game. Which brings us to the review, starting off with what we like with the game, or general stuff, what we like with the game.
I love this programming system. This is a lot of fun. Not only because I always loved these little puzzles when I was younger, like I just always had a good time with them, but because it's actually, there are 4 full rows and you only utilize the 2 center rows and then it's mixed up by someone else. You do actually have this process of, if you're wanting to avoid being last and losing a battery and you're wanting advantage of how quickly you're the one that goes, there are times in which you need to accept the fact that you're going to have a suboptimal double row in order to get the maximum you can, and while also being speed. So that concession that you have to decide, is it worth it to not go somewhere or to go backwards in order to get the most I can out of the turn and go as fast as I can. And then also the combination of whatever these abilities are, combining with your asymmetric abilities. Like my person who is, I think I've played them before, or at least I remember it from when we played online. The ability to hit an obstacle and then actually jump over it means that there's one other element in the game that I don't have to worry about as much. I'll still take damage, but I can immediately hop over it, which stops for other people. And so I like that the characters allow you to negate certain abilities. Like, for example, this value of the boost plus battery was always useful for your character no matter what your health was at, because it's always 4.
Yeah.
And now, as long as you don't hurt yourself and do damage, but it is definitely a very fun way of trying to combine figuring out how optimal this is versus how you can utilize your character, and then also just the zaniness of seeing where you'll end up. Because sometimes if you see other people going fast, you're like, oh, I need to go fast too, and then it's almost like you don't even know where you're going to end up.
Yeah.
As you start to plan out, you're like, oh, I messed this up, or oh, I got really lucky and ended up somewhere I wanted to be.
Which to me is one of the favorite parts about the game, the chaos of the game. We'll talk about some things and what I don't like later, but I love the chaos of the game, and that chaos is often driven by the players. As you have players who are rapidly, like, as soon as you get players who are like, I need to be first no matter what, because I just want to be first and I don't want people in my way, that drives you to quickly go forward and stop trying to achieve perfection, but rather achieve good enough. And good enough is where this game thrives, because good enough is where you start hitting things. Perfection can be boring. Perfection is you jumping over and moving, weaving, and just getting to the end. Good enough has you sliding into the wrong walls, hitting the carpet, accidentally walking into another player, getting shot with a rocket in the back, and I really enjoy that good enough aspect of the game. Combined with that, just the general, just sheer accessibility. This is a game that teaches in a few minutes and just has a few rules as far as the terrain elements and how they mess with different things, and just has a degree of timer that keeps the game moving without being too punishing in a way that utilizes a familiar slide toy that we all know, combined with characters and abilities, and you just have a fun party game with enough strategy that just keeps you invested for, 20 minutes, 25 minutes?
Yeah, it's a quick play.
Yeah, I thought it was very charming. I really did love this programming part, playing with this and fiddling with it and trying to go as quickly as possible. Also, it reminded me a bit of Mario Kart, like especially with the water and getting slippery and things affecting you, and the missile thing where you can attack forward to people. I really liked that part, that you're not just racing, but you're also trying to hurt other people that are in your way. And I also love, like, the board art. I think it's very thematic for what it should be. All of the cards are very unique and different, and colorful. That, yeah, I think for a toy game, it feels like a toy game. You feel like you're in something like Toy Story when you're playing.
As far as things you don't like?
To me, it's just not the style of game I think I would regularly play. This was, I think, my first racing game.
Oh, interesting.
I believe. Yeah.
Interesting.
I think for me it's just not my style. I think it was charming and fun. And I think for everything it did well. Like, I did like the mechanics and the different things in it. That being said, it wasn't enough for me. It wasn't what I needed it to be. And I very much was going for that good enough with the programming.
Yeah.
And I felt fine about it, but I did feel like I'm not making, like, strategic, optimal decisions. I was just going for, let's go quickly, and I just don't know if that's my style of game.
Which for me, ironically, is one of the things I'm going to complain about the game is where the game doesn't lean that way. Meaning, I like the chaos. I like the little elements of knocking into things. To me, the game loses all its charm as soon as it's like, I move 3 forward, I move 2 to the left, I move 1 to the right, and ta-da, I win. Now, having a turn like that in the game, that's satisfying. Having every turn like that in the game, to me, that's boring. To me, the chaos in the game that thrives. If I want a high strategy game where I'm just having a perfectly efficient engine, I'll play something that is 100% not this. This, to me, is the kind of game where I like the chaos, and sometimes if you're depending on who you're playing with or how you're playing it, sometimes everyone's taking their time, and that just leads to a bunch of people having good turns, which to me loses some of the charm of it.
For me, what I don't like is what this game I don't think is designed to be, and I mean that in the sense of how you can not really... You can engage in chaos, and sometimes most frequently the chaos is the board, and every now and then the chaos is the other players. And I want to hurt the other players more. And a game that I think that, if based off of some of the stuff you said, I think you would actually like this more is Death Road's All-Stars. And I played this and that very close in time to each other.
There's this, Death Road All-Stars, and Megapulse. I played all 3 of those in the same time.
So I never ended up playing Megapulse. Actually, no, I did play Megapulse. Yeah, I did play Megapulse. But in terms of Death Road's All-Stars, what it allows you to do is, no matter where you are, you actually can deck build your attack cards and movement cards at the beginning of the game, and you can set yourself up for, like, in Tiny Turbo Cars, if you're here, I can shoot a rocket and hit you. The knowledge of if I'll ever be there is very different depending on when we finish. But Death Roads All-Stars functions differently to where I could intentionally be over here and then utilize the card that I got in the beginning of the game that targets any of these 6 spots. And so it is much more of a racing game that is combat focused, to where I'm not only racing, I'm also affecting the other racers a lot more. However, I don't think this game intended to be that or encompass that. And so I'm excited to play this with my son. This is a game that, we were talking about, what was it, Timeline in one of our videos, and we were discussing, like, this to me is a good family party game. I could bring it to Thanksgiving and introduce it to some kids and some adults, and it's so easy to teach and easy to grasp, and like this as a toy factor is very familiar to kids as well, that it does what it does really well. And what I don't like about it, it's hard to really get onto it for it because I don't think it ever wanted to be that. But I personally, the way I like my games is I want to be able to mess with other players more, and this does feel a little bit like Mario Kart. But the thing that I don't like about a Mario Kart is if you're in the lead, you have a banana and a green shell, and that's all you can do. And like, there's not as much like.
Death Roads All-Stars does heavily lean into a lot more residual behind you combat.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that maybe at 4 players it would feel a little bit more like that, and that almost makes me think I wish that there were different boards based on player counts. I wish there were less lanes for 3 players, and then 2 players fair. Even less. Is there less lanes?
No, not this one. Let's take a look over here. Some of these boards are
I feel like that may help. Oh, so there you go. So maybe playing through with that might help it as well. Yeah, see, that's even a 2-lane
That's what I'm talking about,
Yeah. I think that may have been
what you wanted.
Yeah. I was like, they should do this.
So, that goes into some of my complaints. My complaints, this is where it gets tricky, because I have the Kickstarter version of the game, but this is right now we're reviewing the base retail copy. But the Kickstarter version, or some of the expansions, add a lot more variety to the game. But my other complaint comes to the fact that until you get to that point, you are dealing with less variety. I think the experience can get fairly samey fairly quickly. You do have a bunch of boards over here. I don't actually know whether this is an expansion one or not right now, the one we just added over here. But you have additional terrain effects. You have smoke, you have fire, you have all these other things that go on in the game. I heavily would love to have seen more things that you have that are just more interactive as far as hitting other players. Like I said, most of the damage is from the board, and I don't need it to be a lot, but like we have 1 missile. Even if you have like 2 or 3 commands that are more like sideways missiles or shots over here or things that could mess with other players or leave things behind you on the board that affect other players. Like, I think that I think this system works very well as far as what it's trying to be, but I also think this system, in terms of what it's trying to be, would work very well with more player interactive abuse on each other player.
Like, even if the missile one was just...
All directions?
All directions.
Like one of the vehicles does?
Yeah.
The tank shoots in all directions. So that, one particular vehicle.
And that makes me think, too, because so you get these tokens if you're behind in the race, and it would almost be better if you could get ahead next turn and then drop them, so that when people go into that, it's an obstacle instead in their way.
Yeah, because like on the tank one, spatially when we have played our games, there's actually not a lot of times when you are in line behind to the side, but it's way more likely than just single one ahead. Right. So yeah, certain stuff like that is probably where it loses it for me, and then also. I really do like the versatility, but there is definitely the question of what's available.
Oh, there's more.
Did you guys not see that they have their other stuff? They have their other titles in there.
Yeah, I didn't even see this one. I thought these are other titles from
Horrible Guild.
Yeah,
yeah. So I really like it, but I also think that you would want to quickly push into these areas to get versatility.
Yeah, here's the final thoughts. For me, overall, I really enjoy Tiny Turbo Cars. I think what it's doing, it does very well. I think it's very charming, very compelling, and I think it's also a big part is it teaches in a few minutes and it plays in like 20 minutes. This is just a very accessible racing game. Like when I think of this versus, not that this is a comparison, but like when I think of Death Roads All-Stars, that's more of a commitment to teach and to play compared to the 20 minutes it'll take to pull this out, have a frantic, crazy race, maybe get 2 or 3 games in, mix up some boards, do some fun little things over there. I overall really enjoy the experience, and for right now, this one is a 4 out of 5 for me. me. I say for right now very specifically because right now this does very much fall in the category and genre of a game that, depending on how those additional things continue to mix it up for me, it's the kind of game that I'm like, ooh, this is a lot of fun, and then, 2 years from now, it's like, oh, it was fun, but, I moved on from it. I don't know if I will or won't right now, but I have that sense, yes, it's a 4 to 5, yes, I enjoy it, yes, I highly recommend it, I have a blast playing it, and it plays well with different age counts, player groups, and all that, but I do wonder on the longevity of the experience.
Yeah. For me, I really enjoy it. I like pretty much everything that I play from Horrible Guild. The degree to which each of them become, like, the rankings of how I feel about all their games are different, but I really love the kind of, like, ethos of all of their game experiences for me. It's just, I get a lot of joy from it and derive a lot of satisfaction. I think that I'm probably also at a 4 out of 5. I will say that with the caveat that I don't think it will ever get higher than 4.
Yeah.
I think it will just be a 4 out of 5 game for me, and I don't need that to go any higher because to me it is what it is. Mm-hmm. I think it's a 4 out of 5. It could over time, if I really play through all of the tiles and all of the people, and I feel like I get like my game out of it in terms of the amount of times I've played it, it might drop to like a 3.5 or something. But for right now, it's pretty just consistently a 4 out of 5 for me. It's a fun game. I enjoy it. I like the variability of the players. I like the variability of the boards, and it's one that I want to keep showing to different people.
I enjoyed it. I had fun playing it. For me, I described it as I would always be happy to play it. If someone wanted to play it and asked for it, I would. I don't think I would ask to play it. So I think I was a little bit less enchanted than you guys. Mm-hmm. But again, I go for more strategic type games. So for me, I think it was really fun and charming, just not my style.
Cool. And then for other game recommendations in general, we've already been talking with them the whole time, but Megapulse and Death Rose All-Stars, if you're looking for racing games with chaos and things happening and things being thrown in your face, those two are not yet available, but they are Kickstarter games or were Kickstarter games and should be at some point. But all three of these are leaning heavily into a combination of race, a combination of chaos, and giving you very different experiences along the way. Yeah. That's basically it. Until next time, I'm Alex.
I'm Devin.
And I'm Meg.
Have a good one.
Bye.